Today, I think the Indian startup ecosystem is in a major growth phase. Right? But if you really look at who is going to be the main driver for this, who's the protagonist in the entire show that's actually happening today, it's the entrepreneurs, right? The startup founders. I mean, there are other important components of the ecosystem, like investors, like the other enabling environment, the mentors, the laboratories, and so on and so forth. But then ultimately, I think the main epicenter of the entire ecosystem is actually the startup founders. So what we realized is the startup founders function under a lot of constraints. One is they are young, and then they will have to do multiple things at the same time. They will have to possibly do the development, they will have to do the marketing, they will have to hire talent, they will have to seek fundraising, and so on and so forth. So they don't really have what is called as a bandwidth, and they are also operating under a lot of capital and resource constraints. So that's when we realized that can we do something for these entrepreneurs so that they will be able to in some way make the whole process of scaling up a lot more quicker. So that's when we said that the information is very critical in the early part of the startup journey. So as you rightly mentioned, there are other information sources that provide information of the startup ecosystem, and what we have been trying to do at YNOS and also at IIT Madras. So there is a significant difference in terms of what we are trying to do and whom we are trying to address the requirement of. Right? So generally, if you look at the ecosystem, the most common information that gets captured is a transaction information. Okay, so that means which company has received investment from which investor, when did they receive the investment, what is the quantum of investment, at what valuation they have received. So those are the normal transaction information that gets captured. But then we realize that we need to give information that is very different, and we need to target something for the entrepreneurs, because entrepreneurs have not been able to leverage some of the existing sources. One, because they were not accessible in terms of cost, and second, they did not provide information that the entrepreneurs needed. So when we conceptualized YNOS, our first thing is, can we have the entrepreneur first in our mind? Okay. Can we start looking at providing information that the entrepreneur would find it important? For example, entrepreneur would find the investor information very important. Who are the different investors? Where are they investing? What are the investment preferences? At what stage of the company they are investing? Is there a syndication that they are normally investing with? So those are the information that the entrepreneur is looking for.
In one of your interviews, you said that in a average venture capitalist or large size venture capitalist fund, there are 20,000 applications and they invest in 50 companies. So which means to say that per successful outcome, the number of applications, the number of interactions are too high. How does YNOS kind of fine tune this so that we don't spend an average 18 to 20 months, in deep tech startup, by which the opportunity window might have been gone? How does YNOS kind of filter through this information and make the bonding or the coupling happen faster?
I think it's a very good question that we are looking at. So I think you are talking about how do we cut through the time that it takes. See, fundamentally, there are two major actors, right? We're talking about investors, and then we are talking about entrepreneurs. An investor would like to see more number of startup whether it takes a final investment decision, right? The example that you cited is, okay, they see thousands of companies and then they maybe invest in a handful of maybe tens or hundreds and so on. But then for an entrepreneur, as you rightly mentioned, the entrepreneur would like to meet as few an investor as possible and conclude the investment transaction, because I think that gives them an opportunity to focus on the business, focus on the operations and so on. So what we have done is, one is we have given the entire the basket of investors that are operating in the country to the entrepreneurs. The second is how do we ensure that we are able to recommend the most suitable investors for that particular startup. Right? So this is where we have developed an AI-based recommendation engine, where we have taken findings from some of the top research that's actually happening in terms of how investors prefer on what kind of startups to invest in. And we have used those findings And then based on that recommendation engine, we're able to recommend a very short list of investors to the startup, right? So the startups don't have to necessarily skim through the entire list of thousands of investors, or they should not actually go for what is called as a trial and error approach, where they reach out to investors who are not suitable, right? See, ultimately what happens is every negative response an entrepreneur gets, it shatters his confidence, right? And an entrepreneur should actually try and get his positive decision as quickly as possible, right? So that's what we are trying to do.
So you are saving the entrepreneur's fuel.
Yes, yeah,
to the point of destination.
yes, we kind of save his confidence, we kind of save his time, we kind of save his effort, right? And then try and ensure that he meets the right set of investors so that he can conclude the transactions possible.